Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Now, we've been spending a lot of time, you may recall, talking about the Eroica. We did our big Beethoven third roundup with a bazillion Eroicas, and then we talked about the absolutely vile, horrible, outrageously stupid recording issued by Ensemble Cristofori featuring single strings to a part. Oh my God, was that horrible. And now it is my great pleasure to announce that I have another absolutely vile, reprehensible, disgusting recording of the Eroica. They just keep coming. They're like some sort of disease. It's like the red tide, some sort of toxic microorganism washing up on the shore, and they just keep on coming. Maybe it's a function of global warming or the environment. Everyone has to do a disgusting Eroica. I don't know, but they're doing them and they're issuing them. And the latest vile, awful, just atrocious Eroica is this one. Francois-Xavier Roth with his period instrument band Les Siècles on Harmonia Mundi. Boy, is this atrocious. Oh my God, it's horrible. But there are a few things about its horribilosity that I really want to get into in a little bit of detail, because there are some things that really disturbed me about this release. Not so much just the awfulness of the performance, but its reception as well. You know, Roth is kind of like a Roger Norrington wannabe. He has this concept, and he created this band to play his concept, and they do, and they play it very well. They're a very good group. They're very talented. And so he's doing everything from Beethoven to modern stuff, to Ravel and Debussy. Well, you know, all as if period instruments mean something once you get past, 1870 or so. They barely mean something before 1870 or so. But that's something we'll get to in a moment. One thing that no period instrument ensemble, as we understand it now, that is from Beethoven's day on back, ever had was a modern conductor. The first one might have been Francois Habeneck, the guy who invented the Paris Conservatory Orchestra. But essentially, orchestras in Beethoven's day, and particularly at the time of the Eroica, around 1805, in that area, you had a first violinist. And if somebody got up and conducted, they did it after maybe one rehearsal, and the players still had a tremendous amount of freedom. You read a fabulous discussion in Spohr's autobiography. He admired the Paris Orchestra more than any other, because he's writing now in the 1830s, because they imposed uniform bowing, which he thought was a very desirable thing. And it was quite novel in the 1830s and was for much of the 19th century. But he traveled to Italy, and when he went to Italy, he was listening to a performance, I think it was a Rossini opera or something like that, where everybody was freely ornamenting their parts. And they were all ornamenting the same musical line in different ways. And he wrote it down, what they did. The horn played it this way, the clarinet did it that way. And it was a complete free-for-all. He was, of course, appalled. He thought that was a sign of degenerate musical culture. But that's very much what was happening in the first decade of the 19th century, still, and in places outside Italy. And conductors today, there is nothing authentic in what these people are doing, because there's nothing authentic about the conductor, about Mr. Roth. I mean, his conception of the work, his ideal of what this should sound like, has nothing to do with an idiomatic style of the period. It has to do with what is going to make him stand out, triangulating his approach as compared to all of the other period instrument people and modern people and other people who have conducted the Eroica. You cannot go back. You just can't. You can't imagine a performance like this. I feel 100% sure that had 10,000 recordings of the Eroica not already existed, then 95% of the things this guy does would never have happened. couldn't have happened because they have nothing to do with period performance. Take the very opening of the symphony. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? The very opening. Bum, bum, do, 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 do. Okay, right? We know the opening. 2 chords of E flat major. Well, he has noticed that the violins are playing quadruple stops or triple stops or, stops, several notes at once. Now, a violin cannot play that many notes without breaking them up a little bit, at least. You can go whump, whump, sort of over the instrument and get all of those notes in, but you can still make it sound absolutely like a single note. There's no reason why you can't, and there's no suggestion that Beethoven wanted anything less than that, because he does not notate those notes in different time values or do anything to suggest that he wants those chords to be arpeggiated, meaning played one note after the other noticeably, like when a harp goes do, 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 like an arpeggio. That's why harp and arpeggio are the same word. Well, Roth has his violins playing like an orchestra of harps, because they go do, 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 do. And so that the tempo is very, very quick, but you don't know it from the initial 2 chords because they're so spread out and they're timed in a way that you can't detect what the opening tempo is going to be. Nobody in Beethoven's day could have done such a thing. They couldn't have. It wasn't physically possible unless you had lots of rehearsal time and an orchestra with a definite conductor who could set the correct tempo after the 2 introductory chords in their own tempo. I mean, it's just not possible. And so that's how we get started. And so all of these mannerisms, and there are so many others. Let's take another example. Oh, I'll have so much fun with this. First of all, the entire first movement is played very, very quickly, close to Beethoven's metronome marking, and completely inexpressively. It is the most emotionally castrated performance I have ever heard of the first movement of the Eroica. It goes like this. I could go on and on. I'm singing it better than they're playing it. I'm not kidding. It's just as mechanical and expressively indifferent a performance as I've ever heard. However, at the end of the second subject, he actually makes a Luftpause. The second subject is just those repeated chords. Lam bum 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 ba da. Dun 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 da 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 bum 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 ba da, or something like that. He actually makes a pause, just so you know he's there. And that's just so nice to know. And then you've got that dum bum dum bum da 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 dum dum ba da dum ba da dum ba da dum boo doo doo doo. And see, then it comes up to that dum 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 dum. It's all marked staccato by Beethoven with dots, exactly like that. Staccato, jump 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 jump, that jump 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 jump. Do, 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 right? You get that, right? So he does those staccatos as slurs. I mean, slurs. Da, 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 instead of dum, 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 it's why? It's the opposite of what Beethoven wrote, number one. And number two, again, it's nothing to do with period anything. Nothing. Zippo! It's completely Mr. Roth doing something different for its own sake. Then the only other thing that's worth mentioning in this first movement is just how flat the dynamics are. That huge, exciting, dissonant pileup in the first movement. It goes for nothing in the development section. At the beginning of the development section, it just goes for nothing. It's the brass are held back. And of course, the tempo is totally mechanical and rigid. And so there's no power to it at all. And then when that lyrical thing comes in, you do 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 da 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 da, he decides to put an accent in a weird part of the phrase. It's ya da 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 da, like that, or something like that. You'll when you hear it, if you hear it, it bulges. It's like it has cellulite in a very embarrassing spot. So every time you hear that, it's just horrible. Absolutely horrible. And then, of course, you get to the recapitulation and the coda, where the trumpets get the tune. And, of course, he can't possibly let the trumpets finish the tune, because that would require an emendation. That would require doing something that Beethoven didn't write. But here's the hypocrisy. 99% of what he's doing is what Beethoven didn't write. So why not at least give the trumpets the tune? I mean, if you're going to ignore Beethoven, if you're going to ignore his staccato marks, if you're going to stick accents where he didn't put them, if you're going to arpeggiate every string chord, whether Beethoven wants it or not, you can't add the trumpets? No, because that wouldn't be authentic. That would be an obvious tampering of the score. And that is where the hypocrisy lies. Because what Roth wants you to think is that all of the crap that he is festooning on this work, that he's dumping on the score, all of his wanton, completely random, unintelligent, anti-musical, non-Beethovenian manipulations, he wants you to believe that those are authentic moments. But they're not. They're not. It's just his own bullshit. That's all it is. And that's how the whole performance essentially goes. You get to the funeral march, fairly quick tempo, but not as fast as a lot of the other period instrument people go. It lasts about 14 minutes. But same thing. You have, sforzandi in weird places. You have the major section where you get that fanfare. Yum, bum, bum, yum, bum, 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 like that. It's an opportunity to really do something, because musically it has no substance. It's just, bum, 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 bum. That's the way he does it. Totally with no musical substance. It's just a farce. And then, of course, there's the scherzo, which, because the whole performance is metronomic and mechanical at the extreme anyway, is unbelievably metronomic and mechanical. And finally, the finale. Now, the finale is kind of funny because, the violin part begins with a grace note. It's sham. And some people really make something of that. It's sham. They really make a, you get to hear those two notes. Most of the time, you just hear wah, da, 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 da. Well, here's an opportunity, if he wants to arpeggiate everything, where he really can, because Beethoven wrote it that way. So he doesn't. He doesn't do it at all. Why do what Beethoven wrote? Do what you want. That's what it's all about. And who cares what this guy wants? Does he really have anything meaningful to say about Beethoven? He gets through the finale. It's light, it's fast, it's like everything else. And then you get to the coda. The coda, which is markedly slow. It's not presto. The horns are recessed. The whole thing is so completely and totally anticlimactic. It's really, really startling. Absolutely startling. It's just god-awful. Absolutely awful. And like I said, completely inexpressive. And that's what really bothers me. But the other thing that disturbed me profoundly is this. I'm a student of the critical profession in a way. I love criticism, obviously. I like reading other people's criticism. Before reviewing this, because this has been out for a few months, I went and read all the reviews that I could get my hands on of it. I really want to know what other people say. Most of them were very positive. Some of them were intelligently negative, I must say. But most of them were just ridiculously positive. But what really, really disturbed me about all of these glowing reviews that this piece of shit got, frankly, is that most of them, very few of them, mention any other performances at all. It blew my mind how can you not discuss other versions of the Eroica when reviewing a new version of the Eroica? It's not as if the performance will never compete. I mean, when Hoenick's came out, Hoenick's with Pittsburgh, it's one of the great Eroicas ever recorded. It stands comparison with anything that's come before. So it's possible, not likely, but it's possible. And what really bothered me was that you had no sense that these people writing these reviews knew anything about the discographic history of the Eroica. And that, my friends, is simple critical malpractice. If you're going to write a record review of the Eroica Symphony, a piece that's been recorded so many times, you have an obligation to tell people, and this is in writing, mind you. This is video chat thing I think is a little different. But even there, we do it. I do it, right? You talk about what the classic versions are. You talk about Hoenick. You talk about Zell. You talk about Kleiber. You talk about Monteux. You talk about, if you want to talk about period instruments, let's talk about period instruments. Okay. If you want to hear a period instrument version of the Eroica with no conductor, there's Collegium Aurum under Franz Joseph Meyer. Now that was a wonderful Eroica, and it had no conductor. And it didn't sound anything like this. Not a bit. Some people like the Gardner. You cannot, first of all, relegate a recording of this symphony to the period instrument ghetto. It's wrong to only compare it to other period instrument performances. They are not a world apart from normal Eroica performances. That's a joke too. Because as I've just explained, there's nothing authentic or periody about this. Periodical, whatever you want to call it. And the fact of the matter is that 99.99999% of the piece is exactly the same, whether you're on period instruments or not on period instruments. And the only difference is that you're following some guy with his own stupid ideas. So every single Eroica that has a conductor should be compared to every other single Eroica that has a conductor, irrespective of the type of instruments that are allegedly being played and how authentic they allegedly are. And when I see reviews where people just say, oh, I heard it, it's wonderful, it's so exciting, it has weird accents in bar 63, and oh, there's a sforzando in the funeral march, and the scherzo is light and very, very fast, and the horns are terrific. I mean, yeah, they may have listened to it, but who cares if they listen to it? They have to have something intelligent to say about the performance, just as a Roth has to have something intelligent to say about the work. And all I am seeing when I read through reviews of this is a love feast of ignorance and stupidity, whether it's on the part of the performer or whether it's on the part of the people writing about the performance. And so the circle is complete. It's a perfect storm of moronic Beethoven commentary. And that moronic commentary takes the form of a performance or it takes the form of a discussion of the performance. It doesn't matter. It's moronic, no matter how you slice it. And that really saddens me as to where the profession is right now, because it's so easy. It's so easy to do this correctly. It's not like there isn't a consensus about what the great versions of the Eroica are. The great versions are, yes, the great versions of the Eroica are. There we are. I mean, there is a consensus, and you have to talk about it. You have to know what it is. You have to at least let your audience know that you know what it is. Otherwise, nothing that you say is going to be meaningful. One difference here is that I think Roth knows what it is, and so he's determined to be different. And if he can be different under the guise of scholarly rectitude that validates the stupid nonsense that he imposes on this symphony, then he's going to do it. It's like Norrington. It's snake oil sales. That's what it is. It's patent medicine. It's promising something special and unique and original and delivering something else. It's a bait and switch. I could come up with an endless list of analogies to describe this phony baloney Eroica. Oh, by the way, you do get a very interesting overture, Méhul, by Méhul, the Amazons, les Amazones, les Amazon. Yes, which is far more interesting than the Beethoven, but who cares? I mean, someone else will eventually get around to doing some Mayhew overtures besides this guy, and they'll probably be better. Although I think the performance has a lot more gumption than the Eroica does. I still don't understand why he didn't seem to give any thought to the intensity of what Beethoven wrote, to the dynamics, to the accents where Beethoven wrote them, to the articulation, to the lyricism of its long lines. It's an embarrassment. It's an anti-musical embarrassment. And that is why I mean, I don't have my blowtorch with me. It's over there. I suppose I could go up and get it, but what's the point? Really, what's the point? I mean, the place still smells like burned plastic from last time. I'll find some use for this, but it's just disheartening. It's truly disheartening that people like this have careers, people give them money, people are snowed under by their nonsense, and people who pretend to be critics, who are tasked with telling you or suggesting how your money will best be spent, how you will acquire an object that you will have for years and years and years, don't seem to give a damn about what your options are, what choices you have. But remember, you always have options. And I think, you can listen to this, you can listen to 100 other ones. But boy, this one was a real downer, folks. It really was. So, I end the way I always end. Keep on listening. Keep on listening to the Eroica. Keep on listening to many other versions of the Eroica. I mean, let me just, I have to let it go. I know I do. This is going on long anyway. But how can you talk about period instrument versions of the Eroica in a review and not mention Macaris, Harnoncourt, Pavlojarvi? Of all people, Pavlojarvi's Eroica is stunning. Of a period instrument type, Thomas Dalsgaard on C-Max. How can you not do that if you are allegedly a critic and asked to review a recording? It's mind-blowing to me. It's just mind-blowing. It really is. So, yes, keep on listening, folks. I have to stop now. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me rant. Thank you for letting me trash this piece of crap. And, until the next one comes along, I can hardly wait. Take care.